Right, so as initially discussed, there is a prohibition on Section 36 of the General Banking Law, which does not allow the DOSRI to directly or indirectly borrow from the bank. And neither can directors or officers be allowed to become guarantors or endorsers or surety for loans, okay, or in any other manner be an obligor or incur any contractual liability. Okay, and Section 36 provides for the exception from the prohibition. The first exception is when there is valid insider lending. Insider meaning this refers to the DOSRI. Then we have exceptions as well for loans, credit accommodations, and guarantees that are extended by cooperative banks to its shareholders. So cooperative banks are not covered by the restriction on DOSRI. Okay, so what's the meaning of related interest? It's an enumeration, okay, of entities and persons and individuals who are considered to be in the same situation as the directors, officers, okay, and stockholders of the bank. So it's just a matter of reading, guys. But included here are the immediate family members of the DOS. Okay, the partners of those DOS. If they are co-owners with the DOS, and other juridical entities like corporation, but this corporation is wholly owned or majority owned or controlled by the DOSRI. So this time included na ang related interest to the DOS. So just familiarize yourself with the meaning of related interest. So if despite the prohibition, guys, considering that one exception is valid insider lending, okay, in that instance, when the exception is applicable, then those three borrowers are required to waive the secrecy of their deposits of whatever nature in all banks of the Philippines. So this is one exception to the bank secrecy law. But actually, it's just premised from the written permission of the depositor or account owner. But this is provided for in the new Central Bank Act. So what's the policy why there is this DOS3 restriction? So the rule is to even out or level the playing field so that there will be no discrimination against outsiders and no preference to insiders to the banking institution. So the goal is to prevent the bank from becoming a captive source of finance for the DOSRI. And there is also a limitation on the amount of the loan that can be extended to the DOSRI. So it should not exceed the capital contribution and the deposit of the borrowing party. So, di ba, DOSRI includes the stockholders. So, they cannot borrow in excess of their capital contribution. And if they are account holders, then whatever is the value of their deposit. So, banks are required to report to the BSP, okay, any DOSRI loans that they have extended. So, when is this DOSRI loan allowed? So, there is this valid insider lending. If it is given in the ordinary course of business, okay, and upon terms not less favorable to the bank than those offered to other borrowers. And this is the third requirement is an important one. It requires approval of majority of all the directors of the bank. And the director who is borrowing from the bank should not be excluded in counting the majority. So the approval of the majority of the directors of the board shall be recorded. Okay, and it shall be reported to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Why do you need to know about DOS3? Okay, asked several times in the bar. Pag 2008 bar, this was the bar question. So can you read Mr. Baronda?
Industry Bank, which has a net worth of 1 billion, extended a loan to Celestial Properties Incorporated amounting to 270 million pesos. The loan was secured by mortgage over a vast commercial lot in the Fort Bonifacio Global City, appraised at 350 million pesos. After audit, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas gave notice that the loan to Celestial Properties exceeded the single borrower's limit of 25% of the bank's net worth under a recent BSP circular. In light of the other previous similar violations of the credit limit requirement, the BSP advised Industry Bank to reduce the amount of the loan to Celestial Properties under pain of severe sanctions. When Industry Bank informed Celestial Properties that it intended to reduce the loan by 50 million pesos, Celestial Properties countered that the bank should first release a part of the collateral worth 50 million pesos. Industry Bank rejected the counter proposal and referred the matter to you as counsel.
All right, so this bar question is about the single borrower's limit, okay, which was discussed before the DOS3 restriction. And in the 2017 bar, can you read as well, Mr. Baronda?
Samito is the president and director of Lucky Bank, a commercial bank holding its main office in Makati. His brother Othello owned a big fishing business based in Malabon. Othello applied for a loan of 50 million pesos with Lucky. Othello followed the ordinary banking procedures in all the stages of the processing of his application. When required, he made the necessary arrangements to guarantee the loan. Thus, in addition to the real estate mortgage, Othello executed a joint and solidary suretyship, issued post-dated checks, and submitted all other requirements prescribed by Lucky. When the loan application was about to be approved and the proceeds released, BG Company, a keen competitor of Othello in the fishing industry, wrote to the board of directors and the management of Lucky, questioning the loan on the ground of conflict of interest due to Samito and Othello being brothers, citing the legal restriction against bank exposure of directors, officers, stockholders, or their related interests. What Question A. What are the three restrictions imposed by law on those three transactions? And letter B. Is BG Company opposition based on conflict of interest and violation of the restrictions on those transactions legally and factually correct?
Okay, so guys, can you answer those bar questions? Mr. Baronda, katubag ka? So let's go back to the SBL slide. So single borrowers limit, okay, remember that this limitation, okay, provides that any loan shall at no time exceed 25% of the net worth of the bank. Okay? Sa DOS3, okay, it is allowed even if the borrower is a DOS3 as long as it is in the ordinary course of business and those other requirements. So how will you answer the 2008 bar question. So it calls for the application of the single borrower's limit because it's expressly provided in the question itself. So what is the amount being applied for as a loan? What is the loan amount?
360 million. Attorney.
And the borrower is Celestial
So
Properties. And are you sure it's 350? It's just 270.
270 day, attorney, sorry.
Okay. 270 million ang loan. The loan is secured by a commercial lot, okay, in BGC valued at 350 million. So BSP gave notice that the loan exceeded the SBL. So the BSP ordered Industry Bank to reduce the amount of the loan. So Industry Bank intended to reduce the loan by 50 million. So mahimo na lang og 220 million ang loan. Okay, but Celestial countered that the security should be released, equivalent to 50 million. So the bank rejected the counter proposal and referred the matter to you as counsel. So the question is whether or not the refusal or the rejection of the counter proposal of Industry Bank is valid. What's your answer, guys? So remember that the single borrower's limit is no loan should be extended in excess of 25% of the net worth of the bank. So it was provided in the problem that the net worth of the bank is 1 billion. So therefore, what is 25% of 1 billion? Gabihan nga bar question na math. What's 25% of 1 billion, guys?
250 million.
50,000.
Okay, that's the maximum loan that can be extended by Industry Bank to any single borrower. So the original loan granted by the bank to Celestial Properties was indeed in violation of the single borrower's limit. Okay, so the reduction of the loan by 50 million, okay, is well within the maximum allowable loan amount, and it complies with the single borrower's limit. So the only question left to be answered is whether or not that will entitle the borrower to the release of the collateral that they put up, since the property is valued at 350 million. So how would you answer this? Is it covered by what we discussed? The single borrower's limit?
Covered by the loan security.
So the refusal of the bank is justified. Okay, so they took out a loan for 220 million since it was reduced by 50 million. So the outstanding loan is 220 million and it is secured by 350 million collateral. So the grant of the loan, okay, is conditioned upon the security put up by the borrower. So being a commercial lot, okay, it is indivisible. So how can you release just a portion of the collateral equivalent to 50 million? It's an indivisible property. Okay, so in any event, in accordance with our mortgage laws, in the event of foreclosure, okay, only the amount of the loan, of the indebtedness, okay, will entitle the bank to foreclose upon the property, and any excess of the value of the collateral, the real estate mortgage, if it is sold in a foreclosure sale, will belong to the owner or the mortgagor, which is Celestial Properties. So dili siya covered, guys, by the SBL, but it cross references to the mortgage laws. How about the 2017 bar question? Share screen. What are the 3 restrictions imposed by law on DOS3 transactions? Where can you find the answer to that? And is the opposition based on conflict of interest and violation of the restrictions legally and factually correct? So who here is the borrower? Kasi borrower sa 2017 board question, guys. Answer me, oy. Who is the borrower?
Otelio attorney.
Okay, Otelo is
Otelio attorney.
brother of Samito. Samito is the president and director. So is the borrower included in DOS3? First question. Included?
Yes, attorney.
Okay, so we know that Othello is subject to the DOS3 restriction. So what are the 3 restrictions imposed by law on DOS3 transactions? You can find that in the requirements for valid insider lending. Because that's the only instance when DOS3 loans, okay, will be allowed. What are these three restrictions?
Attorney, let me try. As per checking here, the 3 restrictions imposed by the law on those 3 transactions are number 1, ratio of net worth to total risk assets. Number 2 is the SBL single borrowers limit rule. And the third is that those 3 cannot borrow nor become guarantor for loans except if there is a written approval of the majority of all directors,
All right, so
excluding those 3 concerned.
your third point, okay, is appropriate, but the first 2, okay, not so. There are more specific requirements with respect to DOS3 loans. So you can answer to that bar question that there must be written approval by majority of the directors of the bank, excluding the director affected by the DOS3 restriction. Okay, so dili ka participate ang president. And then another restriction is that the approval of the board of directors must be entered upon the record of the bank and transmitted to the BSP. And the third restriction is that it should not exceed, you follow the restriction on the amount of the loan. It should not exceed the capital contribution and deposit of the borrowing party. And also the related party atong borrower. Like for example, si President man to. So those are the three restrictions imposed on those three borrowers, right? And is the opposition based on conflict of interest and violation of the restrictions legally and factually correct? How will you answer this, guys? So you need to be sure that Othello is indeed covered by the DOS3 restriction. So first question, is he a DOS kaning si Othello? Director, officer, or stockholder? Yes or no?
No, attorney.
No. So we need to know
No,
what
attorney.
is included in the related interest. Is it related interest? Inyong answer ganina kay covered siya sa DOS3, right? But did you check on whether he falls within the related interest? Okay, so I'm showing you again the slide on related interest. Asa man diha makit-an si brother. Where can you find the brother there?
First degree,
Wala, attorney.
Wala, attorney.
Wala, attorney, kay murag kung imong i-follow, dili na siya ma-appeal sa tong degree, something.
Ikapila day nga degree ang brother day.
Second degree, attorney.
Second degree, attorney.
3. Okay? And only relatives within the first degree of consanguinity or affinity or those legally adopted by the DOS, okay, is covered within the meaning of related interest. So therefore, how will you answer the
Parent.
second question? Is there a conflict of interest and violation of DOS3? Guys, how will you
No,
answer?
attorney.
No. Okay,
No.
right? No. So remember the meaning of related interest because this kind of question might be asked again. Right, so let's move on to loan loss provisioning. So what if a loan, okay, becomes uncollectible? So the monetary board, okay, requires bank in the event that a loan becomes bad performing, they're required to reserve, okay, or make reserves for bad debts or doubtful accounts or for other contingencies. And then the writing off of loans and other credit accommodations and other assets, okay, are also regulated by the monetary board. So once a loan becomes bad debt, it can be written off. And by written off, you can claim it as a deduction, okay, from your liabilities, but there are particular requirements before a loan can be considered as a bad debt or doubtful account. So when a loan becomes non-performing, it affects, okay, public interest, because remember that the money being used by the bank when it extends loans are those that are deposited, okay, by account holders. So to caution this eventuality, because if you're engaged in the business of lending, then there is really a risk. You assume the risk for non-performing debts. So there's a required amount to be reserved by the bank to answer for bad debts and doubtful accounts. So what are these reserves? Okay, in addition to cover for loan loss provisioning, okay, reserves are required by the BSP to control the volume of money created by the credit operations of banks. So banks are thus required to maintain reserves against their deposit and deposit substitute liabilities. So this reserve will be the source of the fund that the bank will release or pay in the event of large number of withdrawals or pre-termination of deposits or deposit substitutes. 2010 bar, okay, it was asked why banks are required to maintain reserves against their deposit and deposit substitutes. So you just answer to control the volume of money created by the credit operations of the banking system, enable banks to answer any withdrawals, help the government finance its operations, and to help the government control money supply. So those reserves, okay, required by the BSP and are in fact deposited with the Bangko Sentral, do those reserves earn interest? So general rule is that it will not earn interest. So whatever interest are accrues to that account belongs to the BSP. Ang katurag yung reserve money ang makuha balik sa bank. Okay, unless otherwise declared by the BSP. Right? And banks are also required to procure the PDIC insurance. PDIC stands for the Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation. So if they accept deposit accounts, then each deposit account must be covered by a PDIC insurance. So what is PDIC insurance, guys? This is just a partial insurance. Why is it partial? Because regardless of the amount actually in your bank account, the beneficiary, who is the depositor, okay, the owner of the money, will be entitled to a maximum coverage of 500,000 or its foreign currency equivalent. But unlike, okay, peso deposit accounts, the PDIC will only cover deposit liabilities, not deposit substitute of banking institutions. So, remember pa mo ang difference sa deposits and deposit substitutes? So, deposit substitutes are not insured unless the owner will take out a separate insurance, but they are not covered by the PDIC. So why is there only partial insurance under the PDIC? Because full insurance coverage is actually perilous to the banking industry because it will encourage risky banking activities. Why? So if you are fully insured for the amount that is in a deposit account, then it's possible that it will be invested in aggressive or high risk investments kay ma-recover raman. It is as if there will be no losses despite the risky deposit. So only partial insurance is provided for in the PDIC. Another prudential measure, okay, imposed upon banks, okay, to protect the public is the limits on equity investment that may be made by banks in allied and non-allied industries. So this aims to limit exposure of banks in different businesses so that ma-control to control the flow of money in those allied and non-allied enterprises. So remember, depending on the classification of a bank, okay, it is only a universal bank who can invest in non-allied enterprises. All other banks can only invest in allied enterprises. And some banks, in fact, cannot make an investment. So remember this. Let's not repeat. Already discussed before. So commercial banks only in financial allied enterprises. Right, since we already discussed the power of the bank, the authority of banks to extend loans, and that is their primary form of earning profits. We need to discuss now the determination of interest rates that may be imposed by banks in their loan and credit accommodations. So remember this rule in the Civil Code that in a contract, okay, the determination of the terms and conditions of a contract should not be left to the will of the other party. Otherwise, that kind of term or condition is considered as kind of condition, guys. Potestative, right? And it violates the freedom of contract. So when imposing interest rates, the Civil Code requires that it must be in writing, okay, in order to impose interest rates. And as regards the fixing or the determination of the rate of interest that will be imposed, then the law requires that it should not be left as well to the determination of just one party. And the rate to be imposed must also be stated in writing and must be agreed upon by the parties, right? But banks have devised several mechanisms, okay, to advance their interest in, to advance their agenda in imposing interest rates that will maximize, okay, their returns or profit margin for the loans that they have extended. So one kind of interest rate that are typically found in loan agreements are these floating interest rates. So are you familiar with this floating interest rates? So what are floating interest rates? These are variable interest rates stated on a market-based reference rate agreed upon by the parties. Is this allowed? Okay, so the BSP allows the imposition of floating rates of interest. And in fact, the requirement is that it must be based on market-based reference rates. So the Manual of Regulations for Banks issued by the BSP, okay, imposes this requirement in order for floating interest rates to be valid. So it shall be stated on the basis of Manila reference rates, T-bill rates, or other market-based reference rates plus a margin, okay, as may be agreed upon by the parties. So if a bank and a borrower, okay, when they enter into a contract of loan, will agree upon floating interest rates, that is a valid agreement as long as it complies with this regulation imposed by the BSP. Okay, another feature in loan agreements are this escalation clauses. So what is an escalation clause? Okay, so parties to an agreement pertaining to a loan or any forbearance of money, goods, or credits can stipulate the rate of interest agreed upon can be increased in the event that the maximum applicable rate of interest is also increased by the monetary board. So what's the rule when there is an escalation clause? Okay, provided that the stipulation on escalation will be valid if there is also a stipulation that it will be reduced in the event that the maximum rate is also reduced by law or by the monetary board. So if there is an escalation, there should be a corresponding de-escalation.
Escalation.
Okay, there is escalation and de-escalation. And second requirement is that the adjustment of the rate will take effect on or after the effectivity of the increase or decrease of the maximum rate of interest. So, dili siya pwede mag-retroact. Okay? The adjustment of the rates applicable on the loan will be applicable, will take effect after the effectivity of the adjustment made by the monetary board. So the validity or the legality of escalation clauses have been raised several times for review up to the Supreme Court. So dakan kay kaso ani discussing the nature of escalation clauses. So the court, okay, recognizes that there is nothing inherently wrong with escalation clauses, and they can in fact be valid stipulations. So the purpose behind escalation clauses is to address inflation of money, because it maintains fiscal stability and retains the value of money, especially in long-term contracts. So escalation clauses are not void per se. Okay, so when will an escalation clause become void? Okay, it will become void if it grants the creditor, the bank, an unbridled right to adjust the interest independently and upwardly. And this will completely deprive the debtor of the right to assent to an important modification in the agreement. So several times the Supreme Court has nullified, okay, escalation clauses without the corresponding de-escalation clause. So what's the difference between a floating rate of interest and the escalation clause? So escalation clauses are stipulations which allow for the increase of the original fixed interest rate. But floating rates of interest, okay, it is not actually a change in the original rate of interest, but built into the contract is that the rate of interest will be variable because it is dependent on market-based references that was previously agreed upon by the parties. So I assigned this case to you because it's a good summary of several cases wherein the bank nullified agreements on interest rates, and these rates that were struck down by the bank by the Supreme Court were loans extended by a very popular bank, guys. Kisay na yung account ani. Who can give the facts of the case? Very brief lang. Volunteer. Para madali. What happened in the case of Vasquez versus PNB? Volunteer.
I will volunteer then.
All right. Go ahead. Just a brief facts of the case because we're more interested in the discussion.
Yes, Attorney. So this is the case decided in 2019, Vasquez versus PNB. So in 1996, Vasquez applied for a grant of loan by PNB. So there are two loans, 600,000 under the Pangkabuhayan ng Bayan program and 800,000 under a revolving credit line. Total is 1.4 million. The toll loans are covered by a credit agreement executed between Vasquez and PNB, and it is also secured by 4 parcels of land covered by a real estate mortgage. So the credit agreement is covered with a real estate mortgage. As part of the agreement, in the credit agreement, there is a stipulation in that agreement providing that the borrower agrees to pay interest on the loan at a rate per annum of, quote, prime rate plus spread interest rate. So the interest rate stipulated in the credit agreement is not a nominal rate, but a reference rate. So the term is prime rate plus spread interest rate. And another provision in the agreement, which is a separate one, provides that the bank reserves the right to increase or decrease the interest rate should the bank's cost of money to fund and maintain such loan while outstanding interest or decrease respectively. So based on that agreement, the bank reserves the right to increase or decrease the interest of rate in case there will be additional cost of maintaining the loan. So basically, there are two provisions: the stipulated interest rate, which is a reference rate, and an escalation clause on the credit agreement. After several years, PNB imposes escalated interest rate ranging from 16% up to 33% unilaterally without consent from Vasquez. So in this case, Vasquez failed to pay the loan, and consequently, PNB foreclosed the parcel of land and sold it at public auction. So in this case, Vasquez filed a complaint for specific performance, annulment of foreclosure proceeding, and damages against PNB. The issues to be resolved in the case, attorney, is that the first question is the stipulated interest rate, which referred to a prime rate plus spread interest rate, is a valid stipulation in the credit agreement. The second issue to be resolved is that on the second provision, whether the escalation clause, which gives the bank a right to increase or decrease the interest rate unilaterally, is valid. And another issue as well is on the judgment of the trial court, whether or not the legal interest of 12% should be applicable in case the stipulated interest is rendered void. In that case, the trial court imposes 12% interest rate because accordingly, the stipulation is void. So it reckoned from the beginning of the loan, which is in 1996, up to the rendition of judgment. Rolling, attorney.
Those are the facts of the case. Thank you, Mr. Ompad. So, ang defense ni PNB here, guys, is that there was just a fixed, okay, rate of interest. Okay, remember that the borrower here took out 2 loans. So, PNB contends that the loan, the first loan had a fixed interest rate of 16.5%, and the second loan had a fixed interest of 18% per annum. So, the nature of the interest rate imposed on the loans, okay, is described by PNB as a prime rate plus spread interest rate. Do you see it in the screen I'm sharing before you?
Yes,
Yes,
attorney.
attorney.
Okay, so prime rate plus spread interest rate. Okay, under the banking laws, okay, we only know about floating interest rate and the escalation clauses on loan contracts. So, will this kind of stipulation on prime rate plus spread be consistent with the requirement on validity of floating interest rate or escalation clauses? Because that's essentially what the court had to do. Because this is this prime rate plus spread interest rate, this is a creation, an innovation of PNB. So how did the court rule on that particular issue? So it nullified this kind of prime rate plus spread because it was in the nature of a unilateral declaration of increase in interest rate. Okay. So the court here also summarized, okay, other instances when it struck down similar stipulations imposed by PNB on its loan contracts. So take a look here at how they phrased their stipulations nullified by the Supreme Court. First, the borrowers hereby agree to be bound by the rules and regulations of the central bank and the current and general policies of the bank and those which the bank may adopt in the future, which may have relation to or in any way affect the line. The bank reserves the right to increase the interest rate within the limits allowed by law and at any time, depending on whatever policy it may adopt in the future. The bank reserves the right to increase the interest rate within the limits allowed by law at any time, depending on whatever policy. In either case, the adjustment in the interest rate agreed upon shall take effect on the effectivity date of the increase or decrease of the maximum interest rate. So, si PNB, guys, the bank actually borrows the wordings of the law. Okay, but still, the court nullified the stipulations as violative of the banking laws. So, the prime rate plus spread kind of interest rate, okay, was attempting to be a floating interest rate scheme. But unlike a valid floating interest rate system, okay, what the particular prime rate plus spread lacked was that it was not based on a market-based reference, which would be the basis of the changes in the interest rate imposed. So, not being based on market-based reference, then it violated the regulations of the BSP. So I hope you remember this case by the time you review for the bar or take the bar, because I expect this to be a subject of a bar question in the future. So maybe it will be your bar year. But nindot siya nga case. Do you agree? I-summarize na
Yes,
lang.
attorney.
Okay, so this could be a future bar question. Okay, let's resume the presentation. Stop share. Okay, diligence required of banks. So there are a lot of jurisprudence as well on what is the degree of diligence required by banks. You'll not what but whether or not a bank is compliant or has observed the required diligence. So the highest degree of diligence is required from banks in view of the nature of their duty as fiduciary with respect to the handling of deposit accounts of their clients. So the banking industry is impressed with public interest. So the highest degree of diligence and standards of integrity and performance are required. So when asked what is the degree of diligence required from banks, the perfect answer that you could give is this: highest degree of diligence and standards of integrity and performance. So banks must handle their depositors' accounts with meticulous care. They must always have in mind the fiduciary nature of its relationship with its depositors and other clients. So failure of the bank to observe the required degree of diligence will expose the bank to liability for payment of damages. So in order for them to carry out their duty to observe the highest degree of diligence, banks are required to exercise the same degree when they are selecting their employees and when they are supervising the work of their employees. So the usual doctrine of last clear chance, which can be a defense to avoid liability for damages, is not applicable to the banking industry. So you cannot justify this as a defense if there is negligence committed by a bank employee. Also, a bank however, a bank can invoke the principle of contributory negligence in order to mitigate its liability. If the bank could prove that the client or depositor contributed in the loss or the damage because of the client's own negligence. So there can be apportionment of losses. So in one case, in Solid Bank versus Court of Appeals, due to the contributory negligence of the depositor or the client, the loss was apportioned 40% to the depositor and 60% to the bank. So liability is not avoided but only mitigated when there is contributory negligence. So what is the liability of banks for the torts or negligence or the fraud committed by its officers? So general rule, banks are liable for the wrongful or tortuous acts and declarations of its officers and agents within the course and scope of their employment. This is the general rule. Okay, liable gyud si bank. So in order for you to have a legal basis when faced with an essay question dealing on this, I suggest that you memorize this particular phrase. Any banks are liable for the wrongful or tortuous acts and declarations of its officers or agents within the course and scope of their employment. So don't forget the particular clause that it must be within the course and scope of the employment. So in decided cases, a bank is liable for the act of the branch manager who categorically admitted that he or she allowed the withdrawal of the amount of a check even prior to the time that the check cleared, because there are rules for the clearing of checks. So under the doctrine of apparent authority, okay, a bank is liable when its branch manager requested the client to deposit a large amount that is supposed to earn interest of 17% per annum, okay, more than what the bank would regularly give to other depositors. So si branch manager nagpasaad og 17% per annum interest. Although typically the interest would only be just pila man. Legal rate 6%, but sa banks actually is just 1%, 2%, gamay kaayo, unless it is a time deposit account. So any act of the branch manager that is wrongful or tortuous, okay, will make the bank liable. So why are banks solidarily liable for the acts of its branch manager and other officers? So the public, okay, the public has the right to rely on the trustworthiness of bank managers and, okay, their reassurances, their representations, because the policy of the law is to encourage the public to trust in the banking system. So if you do not have confidence in the officers of the bank, then it will discourage the public from entrusting their money to the bank. And money in circulation in the banking system is required for economic growth. So there is a need to provide for this rule that bank managers and other officers of the bank, okay, are have the authority to bind the bank. They have the apparent authority to bind the bank. So the liability of the bank extends for wrongful acts and of course negligence. So the liability of the bank is primary. It is solidary with the negligent or fraudulent employee. So not merely vicarious, but primary, because they are required to exercise the highest degree of diligence in the selection and supervision of employees. Okay, even though they answer for the liability of their employees, guys, okay, once established to be negligent, the bank is not required or compelled to continue in its employment employees to whom it already lost trust and confidence. So some more cases when a bank was found liable for negligence. Okay, when the negligence of the employee caused the dishonor, okay, of a check to the damage of the owner of the account. So unauthorized transactions, which were committed by bank employees is also a liability of the bank. So daghan kay siya guys, we cannot discuss them all. Okay, so I'm just showing to you some of the facts which were established in cases, and the banks were adjudged as negligent and liable. So failing to credit funds deposited to an account, when a bank fails to follow its own internal rules of procedure, when a bank will simply rely on the face of a special power of attorney and did not conduct further check or verification. Typically, guys, there's a rule that you can rely on the face of a special power of attorney if it is duly notarized. But exception to that will be banks. They have to look beyond the SPA. So they need to make a verification on the authority of whoever they are dealing with. Okay, when banks fail to compare the signatures on the withdrawal slip and the signature cards. Okay, and when the teller is responsible for the loss of a passbook of the depositor. Okay, so let's move on to the new Central Bank Act. So some of its salient features, we'll go over them in the course of the lecture. It's just an outline sa NCBA. So the BSP, the Bangko Sentral, is an independent central money authority with body corporate, and it is capitalized initially at 200 billion pesos. So you'll find in section 3 their objectives or responsibilities, and in section 5 the corporate powers of the BSP. So read those pertinent sections. They have the corporate powers of private corporations, but they also have special powers, which is what we are concerned about. So how does the BSP or the Central Bank act? It acts through the Monetary Board or the MB. Composition of the Monetary Board. Okay, they are all appointed by the president. They have a 6-year term. There are 7 members. So the chairman of the Monetary Board is the governor, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas governor. It has 5 full-time members and 1 member appointed, designated by the president from any member of its cabinet. But typically, it will be from the Department of Finance or the Secretary of Finance. Okay, so just read section 6 for the reappointment and vacancies in the MB. And here are the qualifications to be a member of the Monetary Board. Only natural-born citizens. Must be of good moral character and with recognized competence in social and economic matters. So these qualifications, if you are a director, officer, employee, consultant, lawyer, agent, or stockholder of any supervised entity, okay, you are disqualified if you do not resign and divest yourself of interest before assuming membership to the board. Or if you have direct connection or substantial interest in any banks within 1 year prior to the appointment, or employed within 2 years from the or be employed within 2 years after expiration of the term. So after your tenure or term as member of the board, okay, you are prohibited from being employed by any of the supervised entities. So other prohibitions on the members of the Monetary Board. Okay, the common thread here is that to prevent conflict of interest. So they cannot be associated with any of the supervised entities like banks, quasi-banks, okay, and other related institutions. They should not hold any public office or public employment during their tenure or be employed by any multilateral banking or financial institution within 2 years after the end or expiration of their term. So grounds for removal, you can find that in section 8. Please read section 8. Okay, meetings of the board. Okay, they just need a quorum of 4 members. But the governor or the deputy of the governor must always be present for there to be a quorum. How about decisions of the board? Okay, all decisions of the monetary board requires concurrence of at least 4 members. But in case of emergencies, okay, the governor with the concurrence of 2 members may approve any matter or take action within authority of the board. When a member of the board will have a personal interest in any matter that is an agenda of the meeting of the board, then that member must disclose the interest, and the decision of the monetary board in that meeting must be made public, as well as the minutes must reflect the disclosure as well as the decision of the board. So here are the important functions of the monetary board. Okay, they have rule-making functions. Okay, they have internal administration of the BSP, and they have quasi-judicial functions. So they render opinions and decisions. So any decision of the BSP governor, okay, can be appealed to the board itself. So the quasi-judicial power is exercised by the BSP governor, and it is appealable to the monetary board and bank. Sila and bank. So civil liabilities of the members of the board. Read that in section 16. So here are the major functions of the BSP. Okay, they represent us in the International Monetary Fund and other international financial institutions. They supervise and examine banks, quasi-banks. They are the banker of the government, the financial advisor of the government, and they issue and place government securities. So with respect to regulation of banks and quasi-banks, they supervise and examine, they approve transfer of voting shares of banks, they handle banks in distress, they extend, rediscount, discount, loan, and advance to banks, and they require bank reserves. So they also function to stabilize money. How do they do this? So they control gold and foreign exchange reserves, as well as the sale and disposition of gold and foreign exchange. So they issue and police currency. So it is the BSP which produces and issues currency, and they have the legal tender power. So other operations of the BSP, just read that. Daghan kayo na. So as law students, we are more concerned with this particular power of the BSP, the supervision and examination of banks. So not just banks, but also quasi-banks, okay, the subsidiaries of banks and quasi-banks in allied activities. So remember what a subsidiary is. Okay, it is a corporation. More than 50% of the voting stock is owned by the bank or quasi-bank. So more than 50 of the voting stock, as well as the affiliates of banks and quasi-banks in allied activities. What's the difference between a subsidiary and an affiliate? So you are only an affiliate if to the extent if the corporation has a voting stock and that voting stock to the extent of 50% or less is owned by a bank or quasi-bank or by the related or linked to the banks or quasi-banks through stockholders or other factors that will evidence affiliation with the bank or quasi-bank. So who are the supervised entities? Okay, remember this, guys. Examination. What do we understand by examination? So the BSP has the SED, the Supervising and Examining Department. Okay, it is headed by a deputy of the MB. And under the NCBA, okay, the Supervising and Examining Department examines the books of every banking institution. How often? Once every 12 months or at such other times as the monetary board may require if they vote upon it by the affirmative vote of 5 members. So it is required, however, that if there is an examination, there should be an interval of at least 12 months between annual examinations. So the NCBA actually affords banks time, okay, to prepare for the annual examination of the BSP. So the inspection made by the BSP in the course of its examination is not open to the public, right? So it is confidential. So in the course of their examination, the SED, the BSP shall have the authority to request from government offices, instrumentalities, and GOCCs any data that it requires. And the BSP can also issue a subpoena through the governor in order to produce the books and other records needed for its examination. So if you refuse a subpoena from the BSP governor, then a petition for indirect contempt may be filed before the court. So is there a remedy against the BSP? Can you obtain a restraining order against the examination? So it is provided in the NCBA that no restraining order or injunction shall be issued to enjoin the PSP from its examination. The exception to this is when there is convincing proof. So bago siya nga, weight of evidence required, guys. Convincing proof. There is convincing proof, okay, that the action of the BSP is plainly arbitrary and made in bad faith. And whoever is the applicant for the injunctive relief must file a bond in an amount to be fixed by the court. So no restraining order, but there is an exception if there is convincing proof that the action is plainly arbitrary and made in bad faith. So can you obtain a restraining order or injunctive relief before the monetary board has even made any action? So in the case of, in one case, guys, okay, this was ruled by the Supreme Court that in order to avail of the remedy of injunction, okay, then it presupposes that the monetary board has already taken action. So what if the board has not yet taken action? Like, for example, it has not yet placed the bank in conservatorship or receivership, or has not closed the bank. Okay, so it would be premature. Okay, if the MB has not yet imposed any sanction, then there is no violation that can be subject of a relief such as TRO or injunction. So, what actions can the monetary board take in the event of distress when banks are in distress? How do they handle banks in distress? So some important terms. First, we have liquidity and illiquidity, solvency and insolvency. So a bank is liquid if it has assets that can be easily converted into cash. So a bank is also considered as liquid when it is able to pay its liabilities when they fall due. So when is there illiquidity? So opposite sa liquidity. The bank cannot anymore meet its current liabilities. How about solvency? A bank is solvent when its current assets are more than its current liabilities. Hence, it has ability to pay its debts. A bank is considered as insolvent, okay, when the actual market value of its assets are insufficient to pay its liabilities, and you do not even consider the capital stock or the surplus because it cannot answer for that purpose. An entity is insolvent when it is unable to meet its current and long-term obligations. So, 4 main actions that the BSP can take when a bank is in distress. But actually, guys, this is not a hierarchy. Okay, the BSP is authorized to, in fact, proceed with closure of a bank, okay, without going through conservatorship. The BSP can proceed to receivership, okay, without having to go through conservatorship. But if the MB, however, will place a bank in conservatorship, then upon rehabilitation of the bank, if the bank can still resume to operate its business, and that's fine. But if no longer able to continue in business, then the BSP will order closure, then proceed to receivership of the bank, and thereafter liquidation of the bank. So in that sense, you can consider it as a hierarchy, no, or a flow of procedure. Okay, step by step man siya. So conservatorship. What are the grounds for conservatorship? If you want to be ready to answer questions pertaining to this guys, the NCBA, its most important provision good is section 29 and 30. So read it in full text gid siya, basaha. Because what I'm presenting right now is already synthesized or summarized. So the most important provisions of the NCBA is 29 and 30. So what is conservatorship? You'll find that, okay, in section 29. What are the grounds when a conservator is appointed? So whenever the bank is in a state of continuing inability or unwillingness to maintain a condition of liquidity deemed adequate to protect the interest of depositors and creditors. If the MB makes a finding such as that, then the bank will be placed in conservatorship for a period not to exceed 1 year. And any expenses will be shouldered by the bank. So what are the requisites for placement of a bank under conservatorship? Okay, first, moagi sa siya og supervision and examination. There must be an appropriate report submitted by the SED of the BSP. there is a finding, okay, for the ground for conservatorship. And then the board of directors of the bank must be informed in writing of the order of the MB directing conservatorship. That's in section 29. So is it possible to terminate conservatorship? Yes. Okay, when the MB is satisfied that the bank can continue to operate on its own and conservatorship is no longer necessary. So, na-remedyohan lang. But if the conservator makes a finding that to continue in business would involve probable loss to depositors or creditors, then the bank will then be placed in receivership. So kung losing na gyud si bank, next step will be receivership. What's the effect of conservatorship? The juridical personality of the bank remains. And conservatorship is not a precondition to the designation of a receiver. And the most important effect of conservatorship is that any transaction already perfected, okay, at the time of the appointment of the conservator can no longer be repudiated by the bank. Okay, so read the qualifications of a conservator. It is also found in section 29 as well as in 30. Okay, but take note that if the conservator to be appointed is a natural person, then it will just be it will be appointed by the monetary board. But it could be a juridical or natural person, ang conservator. But the receiver, however, to be appointed by the MB is only the PDIC. Walay laing receiver sa mga banks. So what are the powers and duties of the conservator? So remember, ang trabaho ni conservator to conserve, okay, the assets of the bank, to place it in a position that will enable it to meet its liabilities. So anything related to that purpose that will enable the conservator to achieve that purpose, okay, that will be one of the powers of the conservator. Maka-reorganize siya og management, collect all monies and debts, all powers necessary to restore the viability of the bank. Right? And notwithstanding the vast powers of the conservator cannot repudiate perfected contracts. So, of course, expenses related to the conservatorship will be shouldered by the bank. So, once the conservatorship is terminated and the conservator finds that the bank cannot continue in business without loss to its depositors and creditors, then the MB will order the closure of the bank. So the closure is summary. No need for prior notice or hearing. And once the closure is ordered, then automatic there will be appointment or designation of a receiver. Okay, so when is closure ordered? When a banking institution will notify the BSP or publicly announce a bank holiday, or when the bank suspends the payment of its liabilities continuously for more than 30 days in any manner. So additional grounds ni siya to order closure. You'll find this in section 53. So magkuyog yun ni siya guys ang closure and receivership. So if any of the grounds for receivership is present, then the monetary board can forbid the institution from doing business in the Philippines and designate PDIC as the receiver. So these powers are summary, no need for prior notice and hearing. In fact, we have this closed now, here later scheme. So Section 30 does not contemplate prior notice and hearing. So what will there be a violation of due process? No. So it is enough that the action, the closure of the bank, can be made subject of a subsequent judicial review. So the closure is summary in order to protect public interest, because allowing a bank to continue will cause further losses to the depositors and the creditors. Yeah, typically guys, mo ni i-ask sa bar. Kanang manirado lang kalit without prior notice and hearing. Okay, daghan nag-bar questions on that. So 2009 bar, may the monetary board order the closure of MPBC rural banks relying on the SED report without need of an examination. Oh, Miss Manlangit, what will be your answer based on our discussion? Uy pa mo guys, naminaw mo? Miss
Attorney.
Manlangit.
Yes, attorney.
Miss Manlangit, what's your answer to the bar question? Manlangit Kathleen? Wala lagi. Warm bodies lagi. Miss Manlangit, are you there? Miss Manlangit. So what's your answer here? Actually, makatabag mo ani without even reading the facts. Kaya ang question itself, it's an objective question actually. Is the SED report a requirement before the monetary board can order closure or take action? Oh, Miss Pugon, what do you think?
I think it's not needed, attorney. As provided in section 30 of the NCBA, it does not contemplate prior notice and hearing before a bank may be directed to stop operations and place under receivership, attorney.
No, the issue in the question was whether or not there is a need for the SED report. Saman. What do you think?
Yes, attorney, it's needed. However, for the closure, the hearing will be made later, attorney. But prior to the closure, the SAD report should be needed, attorney.
Okay, those who I call upon who do not answer me, I will mark as absent. So Miss Manlangit, you are absent ha. You didn't answer me when I called you. Do you have the same answer, Miss Comelon?
It's a no for me, attorney.
Why?
Ano kalimut? Conversion. There is always a need for report sa every banking laws, attorney, sa conversions.
Okay, it's your task to find out the answer to that, huh?
Okay, attorney. Thank
Receivership.
you.
So this is the next stage following order of closure. So this is also a summary, no need for prior hearing. Okay, once the MB directs closure of a bank. So what is the concept of receivership? It is equivalent to an injunction to restrain the bank from further conducting business. So once a receiver is appointed, it operates to suspend the authority of the bank and its directors and officers over the property of the bank. Okay. So once the MB orders closure, then the PDIC will be appointed as the receiver and it will take over and manage the affairs of the bank. So the main function of the receiver, the PDIC, is to preserve the assets of the bank, whatever is remaining, for the benefit of creditors and depositors. So what are the grounds for receivership? Okay, you'll find this in section 30. So section 29 and 30, very important, read it. So whenever the monetary board finds that the bank or quasi-bank has notified, so ni amin na si bangko, there is admission from the bank that it will unilaterally close, or when the bank has been dormant for at least 60 days or in any manner suspended payment or unable to pay its liabilities as it becomes due in the ordinary course of business, when it has insufficient realizable assets, it cannot continue in business without involving probable losses, it willfully violated a cease and desist order from the BSP, and that order has become final. So without need or prior hearing, the MB can forbid the institution from conducting or doing business and designate the PDIC as receiver. So the receiver, the PDIC, will then proceed to liquidation. So here are the requisites for receivership: report of the SED, the finding of the monetary board that of the existence of any of the grounds for receivership, the decision of the board to forbid the institution from doing business, and there must be notice in writing to the board of directors of the order of the MB. The effect of the decision to place a bank in receivership is final and executory and cannot be restrained by the court or set aside by the court. Exception: on petition for certiorari on the ground that the action taken was in excess of jurisdiction or with grave abuse of discretion. So when you are asked the question whether or not there is decision of the MB can be subject to TRO or injunction, your answer will be no. The actions of the MB are final and executory and cannot be restrained or set aside by the court unless, okay, a petition for certiorari. So you do not answer diretso ka sa exception. You state first the general rule. That should be how you answer, guys, in most situations, in most essay questions. You demonstrate your knowledge of the general rule and the exception. Dili maguna ang exception. What are the requisites for the petition for certiorari? Must be filed by stockholders of record representing the majority of the capital stock and filed within 10 days from receipt of the board, okay, directing receivership, liquidation, or conservatorship. Don't forget this, majority and 10 days. Okay, who can act as a receiver? For banking institutions, only the PDIC. But if quasi-bank or non-stock savings and loan associations, then it could be a person appointed by the BSP as receiver. So appointment of receivers vested exclusively in the board. And remember that conservatorship is not a condition precedent, is not a requirement for receivership. So powers and duties of the receiver. Okay, please just read section 30 of the NCBA. So take note that the assets, okay, of the bank under receivership and liquidation is deemed to be in custodia legis, and it is exempt from any order of garnishment, levy, attachment, or execution. So close now, here later scheme. Don't forget that. It is compliance to the requirements of due process that there be a subsequent judicial review. Okay, it is not required at all that there be prior notice or hearing for the closure. So 2007 bar question. Okay, due to growing financial difficulties, Z-Bank was unable to finish construction. Z-Bank was placed under receivership. Okay, and the president of Z-Bank, okay, despite the receivership, entered into a financing agreement. So is the act of the president valid? Will a suit to enforce the right of the investors to purchase prosper? What do you think? True or false? A bank under receivership can still grant new loans and accept new deposits. 2023 bar question. Okay. Fresh na fresh, guys. He said that GB should have been given due notice and prior hearing, where the bank could have explained the reasons for its illiquidity. So, gi-place siya receivership for illiquidity. And the question asked if prior notice and hearing is required. Answer naman eh. Then the final stage, which is liquidation. So, if the bank can no longer be rehabilitated or cannot be permitted to resume business, then the MB will notify the board that it will proceed with liquidation of the institution. So what is liquidation? Okay, so final stage naman siya, guys. It's the nail to the coffin. So all the properties and assets of the bank will be converted to cash and be used to pay the liabilities of the bank for distribution to the creditors, and kung napay mabilin, maybe to the stockholders, but it will follow the rule on concurrence and preference of credits. So there's voluntary and involuntary liquidation if it is through action of the MB. Okay, after order of closure, then it is involuntary. Okay, but there can be voluntary liquidation in accordance with the provisions of the corporation code. But if there is voluntary liquidation, there must still be approval of the monetary board. So the MB has the right to intervene in voluntary liquidation in order to protect the interest of creditors. So what are the grounds? After the designation of the receiver, okay, the MB can summarily direct the PDIC to proceed with liquidation of the closed bank. So the receiver determines whether or not the bank, the institution can be rehabilitated or permitted to resume business. So the MB must notify the board of the institution. So procedure for liquidation. Okay, this is a court procedure, and the receiver will file a petition with the RTC in order to liquidate the banking institution. You'll see that as well in section 30. So the receiver, since it is charged with converting the assets of the bank into cash, okay, can institute or take action to recover all collectibles, and then later sell the assets of the bank for cash. So remember this, during liquidation, the property is still considered as in custodia legis. So in section 31, okay, it provides for the disposition of the assets that were converted to cash during liquidation, how it will be disposed. Just read that. Section 31 and 32. So effects of appointment of the receiver. Of course, mag-stop na gyud og business ang bank ani. They cannot enter into new transactions, new contracts. So if there are pending litigation wherein assets of the bank are subject of the litigation, then there is the effect of stay of execution of judgment to prevent depleting the assets of the bank. So during this time of liquidation, the bank is not liable to pay interest anymore on the deposits. So remember the remedy of the bank or affected parties for the actions taken by the board under 29 and 30. It will be petition for certiorari filed by majority of the stockholders of record, and it must be filed within 10 days. So another important power of the BSP is their legal tender power. So this concerns their authority to issue all notes and coins. And those notes and coins are fully guaranteed by the government of the Republic of the Philippines and is considered as legal tender. Being legal tender, it can extinguish all debts, both public and private, when it is paid. So limitations on coins. Okay, it is considered as legal tender in amounts not exceeding denomination not exceeding 50 pesos if 25 centavos and above, 20 pesos for 10 centavos or less. Is this still applicable? Napa ba 25 cents and 10 cents? Dugay na kayo kitaan na ng coins. So the maximum coins that is considered as legal tender. Up to 1,000 if you're going to pay piso, 5 pesos, and Gs. And up to 100 if you pay 1, 5, 10, and 25 cent coins. So the BSP also regulates exchange rates. Okay, they determine when at what rates the BSP will buy and sell at spot exchanges. Okay, 15 minutes to discuss the law on secrecy of bank deposits. So what's the purpose why we have this law? Buhay pa mo guys, nagdali na ba ako? Namino pa mo?
Yes, attorney.
Yes, sir.
Yes, attorney.
Yun na,
So
attorney.
why the secrecy of bank deposits? To encourage people to deposit their money and to discourage private hoarding. So kita mo na mga news nga ilahang mga kwarta ilang gibutang sa alkansya nga bamboo, nya gi termite siya. So that's one danger, no, if you hoard money. So to encourage the public to deposit their money in banks, okay, they promote this absolute secrecy of bank deposits. So it is prohibited to examine, inquire, or look into deposits by persons, government officials, bureaus, or offices. And the bank, okay, is prohibited from disclosing to unauthorized persons information regarding any information regarding to the covered accounts. So what are the deposits covered? All deposits of whatever nature. Okay, that's it. All deposits of whatever nature are considered as absolutely confidential in nature. This even includes investment in bonds issued by the Philippine government. So what are not included will be money placement accounts. So what's the scope of all accounts of whatever nature? So included ani ang trust accounts pursuant to the Ejercito versus Sandigan Bayan ruling. Trust accounts covered by the law on secrecy of bank deposits. How about foreign currency deposit accounts? So it is governed by the Foreign Currency Deposit Act, but it is also protected by the statute on secrecy. So how do you interpret the extent of absolute confidentiality of bank deposits? So when there is doubt, okay, that doubt must be resolved in favor of confidentiality. That's the ruling in Republic versus Eugenio. So bank deposits are statutorily protected and is recognized to be falling within the zone of privacy. Protected ba siya sa asawa, attorney? Ma-covered ba? Law on secrecy of bank deposit? Or kanang mangutang ka niya, isurrender na nimo imuhang ATM. Okay, so the prohibition is imposed upon banks, okay, and other entities who want to compel banks to violate the secrecy. So mo na siya gi prohibit sa law. All other persons, okay, do not have the duty to protect the secrecy of bank deposits. So confidentiality in foreign currency deposits, okay, covered also by the secrecy laws. Exceptions lang, mas gamay ra ang exception kung foreign currency account. Written permission, order of competent court in AMLA cases, during periodic or special examination sa BSP, when required sa unclaimed balances law, PD 769. And if there is inquiry made by the BSP or PDIC. So general rule is that absolutely confidential. But here's what you need to study for this topic. What are the exceptions? So under the law itself, so 1405, there are 4 exceptions given. Written permission in cases of impeachment, and by order of the court in cases of bribery and dereliction of duty, or when the money deposited or invested is the subject matter of a litigation. So let's take a look at the interpretation of the last exception. Okay, when do you consider the money deposited or invested as a subject matter of the litigation? So in Union Bank versus Court of Appeals, if the suit is filed to recover money because of failure to inform regarding improper crediting, then in that case, di siya considered as the subject matter of the litigation, not the money itself, because the cause of action is due to failure to inform regarding improper crediting. But if the suit in court is filed to recover the amounts converted by the depositors and found in that account, then that is the essence of being a subject matter of litigation. So dapat the money in that account is the very subject matter of litigation, not just incidental to the case. So 2018 bar guys, daghan kay questions jud sa law on secrecy of bank deposits. So in the 2018 bar, kaning issue diri is will ask you to determine whether the money is subject matter of the litigation. So check that out, 2018 bar. So those are just the 4 exceptions found in the law. But there are other exceptions from jurisprudence and other laws. So the Commissioner of Internal Revenue can inquire into bank accounts pursuant to the NIRC. In prosecution for unexplained wealth, okay, under Section 8 of Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, there can also be inquiry or examination of bank deposits. Under the Anti-Money Laundering Act, guys, the AMLC, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, can inquire into bank deposits when they have reason to believe, okay, that the money in a particular account is related to an unlawful act, such as kidnapping, 9165, hijacking, arson, destructive arson and murder, etc. And that the last one, terrorism and financing of terrorism act. 2018 bar. So does the AMLC have the power to order a banking institution to reveal matters relating to bank accounts? So kung naaming ani nga question, take a look if the felony is one of those included sa AMLC, sa Anti-Money Laundering Act. Here, the offense is graft and bribery. So is that included sa AMLA?
Yes, attorney.
That will authorize the AMLC to inquire into bank deposits, graft and bribery. And also, ang nature sa account. Here, the question mentions that it is a foreign currency deposit account, FCDU. Yeah, di ba gamay ra ang exception sa FCDU? So other exceptions, if there is inquiry or examination in the course of the regular examination or special examination of the BSP and PDIC. Other exceptions, kaning power sa ombudsman to examine bank accounts when it is conducting an investigation. Also, when there is garnishment of deposits, okay, there will be an examination or inquiry into account incidental to an order of the court to garnish deposits. So that is considered as an exception. So here's a mnemonic, guys. Muna ang popular nga mnemonic sa exceptions to the law on secrecy of bank deposits. Pikun Guapo TH. Muna akong gigamit kato nag-study ko og for the bar. Permission of the depositor investor, impeachment, court order, in cases of bribery or dereliction of duty, or money deposited is the subject matter of the litigation. Unexplained wealth, prosecution under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, the NIRC, or authority of the commissioner, garnishment or execution, unclaimed balances law, the AMLA, the PDIC or BSP inquiry, the ombudsman's power, the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act, and the Human Security Act, but by order of the Court of Appeals. And kaning sa Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suspension by authority of the AMLA. So what's the penalty for violation of the secrecy law? It will subject the offender to conviction. Upon conviction for imprisonment. Yeah, bugat biya siya guys, 5 years. So the persons who will be penalized here will be the bank and any bank jud. Okay, sila may mo disclose. So 2023 bar. Nireklamo siya si Governor of Sorsogon kay why gi-disclose sa usa ka news company, Balita Magazine, ang iyahang 60 million account. So he complains of violation of bank secrecy. Sakto ba? Jacinto filed a criminal complaint against Balita Magazine for violation of bank secrecy laws. Kaya gidisclose ang iyahang US dollar bank deposits. Will the complaint prosper? Answer guys before we end because it's already 3:28.
No, attorney.
Why man? Is Balita Magazine?
Because Balita Magazine is not a bank, attorney.
Hindi siya bank, no? Sa'yo na kayo na.
Yes,
Not,
yes, attorney.
has no duty to comply with the bank secrecy laws.
Bank secrecy law.
Okay. So, wag siya na human. PDIC. Ang wala na to na human kay PDIC. Alright, so let's, next meeting we'll have your prelims. 10 items, 100 points. Any question? Coverage will be from the beginning. So make sure that you read my assigned cases. Okay? Ay mo pagsalig sa akong presentation. Basta nag-think mo nga akong presentation, kaya mo akong i-exam ninyo. It will be the syllabus. Right?
Yes, attorney.
Yes, attorney.
Yes, attorney.
That's it guys. So see you next week. We will have our 1 hour 30 minutes no. So we'll have the exam from 1:30 to 2 hours. Taas kaayo. So it will just be a 1 hour 30-minute exam. Okay?
Noted, attorney. Attorney, exams of attorney.
Wala exam soft yet. So we'll be using Canva but you'll be taking it in school. Okay, katurang maka-online are the official online learners and they are required to comply with the 2-device rule. If na ako'y masakpan nga nag-cheat, hagbong jud. Okay? Alright, see you next meeting. Good luck. Study the syllabus and assign cases.
Attorney.
Thank you, attorney. Thank you, attorney.
Attorney, okay ra 2 hours,
Yes.
attorney, ang exam?
Let's have it 1 hour 30 minutes lang to discourage browsing.
Okay, attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, attorney.
Thank you, attorney.